So what I'm doing today is I am basically going to show you a really quick and dirty inking process that I do. So the first program that I'm going to open up is going to be Clip Studio Paint. And we're going to file, open recent folder. Those of you who follow me on social media will recognize this particular image. This is a illustration sketch that I've been working on of my character Beans, and he's watching TV. So basically what I'm going to show you, you can see all these layers over here on the right hand side that I've created. These are color layers. So let's go ahead and hide all these, and you can see my base here. And this is the sketch layer. Let's go and get rid of this. The sketch layer that, actually it's not a sketch layer. It is a refined ink layer. And I just wanted to get it to black line and a little bit crisper than probably you're used to seeing my illustrations. And the reason for this is because in this particular program, there's a great feature, this little paint bucket over here, the fill, along with the figure fill lasso. So if I select, let's say this, it has a lasso fill, and I'm going to go ahead and create a layer on top, actually on the bottom. If you hear me clear my throat every once in a while, it's allergy season up here in the mountains, so my apologies. We're going to try and limit that in this particular video. So the lasso fill is really great because I don't have to really do anything. I just create a lasso and it fills whatever I want to. So let's say I want to go ahead and fill in part of his blankie. And by holding the shift button, actually not by holding the shift button, we're not going to do that. So you can see me going in and just filling in some of these areas. And I can do this really quickly, but an easier way to do this, especially whenever you have lines like you see, let's go ahead and get rid of this and create another layer really quick. And of course I'm underneath my line layer here. So that's one way of doing it, and that's kind of more of a detailed way. But a quick and dirty way to do it is the paint bucket. So you can actually modify the way that the paint bucket interacts with the lines in the document. Excuse me, in the file. So I've got it to refer to other layers. So every time I do this little fill, it's going to refer to the layer that's visible or any other layer that's there. So it's referring to this layer too. And what's nice is whenever I go ahead and remove that layer, you can see it only filled up to the black line in that particular layer. And it does a really good job of it. The aliasing, and you can adjust the aliasing down here in the closed gap, and I can make it a little bit stronger whenever I go ahead and fill and make sure I'm on the correct layer here. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, is you can really go fast and just put in, color very quickly. Dirty, I say dirty, but it's not dirty. It's very efficient in doing what it's doing. And, sometimes you'll get a little, say like right here, you don't have that fill. So basically I'd come back and I'd use that lasso to come here and see how that works. It's really nice. And any parts that it doesn't fill, you just come back into the lasso. I say lasso, whatever. And you can go in and really effectively, quickly put in color on different layers that you're working on. Oops. So I did that. Took me a little while because I'm not really strong in terms of color theory. I just, I'm putting in something called local color, which is color that doesn't have any light source on it. And that, in and of itself, is not hard to do, but intermixing the colors, making sense in the context of the illustration, that takes me a little bit more time. So I took my time. I'm not saying that this is going to be the best colorway, because obviously I'm not a colorist. So I went in and did exactly what you just saw through the duration of the illustration, and I ended up with this. Excuse me. And Remember, this is local color. It doesn't have any light or shadow on it. So the color, basically, if you stripped away the color or the light and shadow, and depending on your light source, whether it's a cool light source, a warm light source, or whatever, you're going to get this color right here. This is kind of the mid-tone. I'm sorry, that mid-hue, without any tone on it. So I've created that, and I've got it's all organized into nice little layer components. You can go in and see, I can hide a few layers here, like I've got him on his own little layer, and the blanket, and the grass, and this is layer management practices that I've talked about in other videos. Actually, I don't think that one's there. Yeah. So, yeah, originally I had that right there, and I'm like, nah, I don't want that. So, effectively, I have wrapped up this particular stage of the illustration. This is very, like I said, a quick and dirty way of putting in color in the document, in the how do I put it? In the progression of the illustration. So we started out with a sketch. I don't even know where the sketch is. Where did it go? That might be it right there. It is not. So I showed the sketch at an earlier stage, and you can see it was pretty rough, and you saw the lines. And I went in and just really simplified. That's my clock telling me to take the garbage out. Then I went back in and basically put in this crisper line on purpose so I could come back in with that paint bucket and put in this color. Put in this color so I could create the document to not transform, but so I can have a nice solid document to go over to Photoshop. I like Photoshop and its rendering engine and a lot of the brushes that I have over there. And if you look over here to left hand side, I do have a lot of brushes here, but I like Photoshop a little bit more. Just because I have a higher level of comfort. I've been using Clip Studio Paint for a long time, probably since it came out when it was Manga Studio. And it is a powerful tool, especially if you're, inking and comic books and stuff like that. I typically use Photoshop a little bit more. So let's go ahead and save this document. Control S. And we're going to come over here to Photoshop, which I already have up. And in the Clip Studio Paint, you can save as. So let's go back. I'll show you just for posterity purposes. I wanted to make sure and cover my bases here. So if I go File, Save As. So we're on a PC today, not on a Mac. So you can say different formats: Photoshop Big, Photoshop Document, Clip Studio Paint format. I typically will save everything that I do inside of Clip Studio Paint in a Photoshop document, because typically like I said, I use it for inking purposes because it's so fast and so good in that context. And then as a Photoshop document, I go ahead and close it out. And so, File, Open, Beans Relaxing. Right, I should have known that it's right there in front of me. Okay, now we are inside of Photoshop. Yay, Photoshop, we love you. So, Photoshop, again, we're ready to go ahead and progress through. So, over here on the right-hand side, got my brushes, which is nice. Go ahead and close out of that because I typically will go here. My brush settings, and if I need to change the brush, I've got it over here on the left-hand side. Okay, oops, I accidentally touched things. What is it doing? What I've noticed sometimes about Photoshop, especially on a PC, is it doesn't want to do what I ask it. Okay, so now we're good. Sorry about that. Okay, so what do I have locked? So right now, what's nice too about Clip Studio Paint is whenever you save the document as a Photoshop file and you have layer effects and all that other stuff, it does transfer over as a Photoshop document with all those layer effects in the file itself. So like I had this locked as a transparency because I was working on the socks. right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in some light and shadow, really loosey-goosey, and there's a couple ways I can do this. I can do it overall, like, so it's going to be kind of at night, so I want to be cool shadow, so we're going to go ahead and right about here, cool shadow, a little bit bluer, a little bit cooler, and I can actually go over everything. So here we go. We're going to go to multiply, boom. Got that. Here is my brush. And I like having texture in my illustration. You can see it a little bit here. Whoops. You can see a little bit here, but I like having texture because it gives that hand-done quality to it. So I always like having a little bit of texture. Okay. Let's go to pastel C. You see, and this particular brush has texture. And I can adjust the texture. Oops. There we go. And I can adjust the texture to my liking. So how do I do that? I go here, I go to the texture, and I can scale the texture to have a tighter. See, the larger I get, the larger the texture is, and the smaller I get, the tighter the texture. I typically like to have it at around 55 to 60 whenever I'm doing work like this. And if I want to change the shape dynamics, this particular brush is from creatureartteacher.com. And currently it's the pastel C. What I have in some of my other drawing and illustration environments digitally, like on my Mac, I've modified this brush extensively. And in the brush palette here, how do I get to that? I've got my brush selected. I go up to my brush here. It's pastel C. And I click on here to the dynamics, and then I can modify whatever I want. If I want to taper this, see how it's not tapered currently? It has kind of a flat edge. I can go ahead and shape dynamics this with pressure. Whoops, that's angle. Control, pen pressure. So now I've tapered it, but I don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and get that off. And we're going to come up here. And I can do the same thing up here if I want to taper it. See, now it's tapered. That's a real quick and dirty way. So every time you change a tool over here on the left-hand side, you're going to get a different layer tab, or not layer tab, a tool tab up here that shows the quick and dirty modifications. If you want to go a little bit deeper, then you click on these sub-menus that'll come down, and you can really modify the brush and create a custom feel for what you do. So I just talked about how I wanted to get quick and dirty with the shadows. And I might do this really quick just to get an understanding of what I want to do in the context of the illustration. And that means I want to be fast, I want to be dirty, and I just want to go in and get a feel. So this is going to be my primary light source right here. With also I'm going to have light coming out from here. Okay, so that I need to think about. So the brightest places on the illustration will probably be, I'll have some radiant light coming out from here. Actually, since I'm doing shadow, I'll have a little bit of light source here. What am I doing? So we can't do multiply, so we're going to do overlay. Okay, so here's a light source. Not too much. Of course, it's going to have bright on here, and then it's going to radiate out here. Okay, and it's going to affect things. That's the way light is. It's in a straight line. You know, light radiates out in a straight line. So it's going to affect the environment. So like his face on this side, it's going to be a little bit lighter. You're going to have this. Now, again, this is quick and dirty. I'm just trying to get an idea where my light source is and how it's going to react in the environment. You know, we're going to have a darker shadow here. Maybe he's got there, here. So you can see really quick, within a few seconds, I can get an idea of exactly, you know, where the light source is and how strong I want to be, and a little bit of light source here. And then the light coming from this particular item is going to be more blue. So this is going to be a warm light because I've got a natural bulb in there. Here, and then we're going to have maybe a little bit of light coming out here. Here, top of his shoes, top of his leg, right? Whoops. And the further distance that each item that the light is hitting, the further distance, the weaker the highlight's going to be. Like his hand, we're going to get a little bit right here. Okay, so you can see, obviously, and what I'm doing is just feeling out the light source, feeling out and making sure that it makes sense. Things have to make sense, right? I don't have tilt currently on, which is fine. Again, I'm not. This is just a really quick kind of a color, not a color study, a light study. And then we've got a little bit of light coming here. Okay, so you can see as I zoom out, right now that light source is pretty decent. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create another layer, and I'm going to go multiply. And I'm going to go back to that purple hue that I showed you earlier with a little bit of blue in there. A little bit, that's too much blue. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk shadows. So since he's in the forest, we're going to go ahead and place in some of these dark shadows. Really have him pop out a little bit. It's going to be dark right here. Dark over here. And I'm still not there in terms of composition. I still have to place some trees, maybe. Maybe I'll have let's go and turn taper on. Maybe I'll have some type of tree element, excuse me, coming across, to kind of give you again, you're in the forest and you're just literally kind of peeking in on his evening festivities. Maybe you've got a tree that comes here. You're kind of peeking in. You're looking in on him and his buddy down there. So, like this would be dark because it's not affected by that TV light source. Let's go and turn taper off over here. And you can see very quickly that things are kind of coming around just a little bit. Okay, so now there's a secondary light source, and you guessed it, that's the TV. Excuse me. Is the TV. So I'm thinking, okay, how I'm going to make this viable? Because so now what's happening in my brain, and just to give you an understanding, whenever I'm doing stuff like this, I just don't want to do it and not explain to you the thought process behind what I'm doing. I'm start to thinking about color of light. So this has a warm hue. This light source right here, warm. So now I have to think cool light source, because the TV is blue light. You have that cathode ray tube, or you have the LEDs, and those particular lights are going to be cool. So that blue light is going to affect objects a little bit different. So hold on, I'm trying to get this purple in here a little bit more. Kind of pop out a little bit more. Good. Okay, yeah, you see how it starts to really give you that sense of mood as I'm forming in some of these shadow shapes and directing your eye. My main focus is this right here. Okay, with a little bit of this right here. So now I'm going to go ahead and put, let's go overlay, because it is light, but I'm going to do color of light. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so now we have blue. Let's go a little bit lighter. Blue. So now that light is going to shoot out. Okay. And a lot of times people do this. They'll do this. But what the problem with that is you're going to blanket all of this area right here that really doesn't need to have light. So you need to think about what it's hitting. So here, 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 you're effectively showing what the light is hitting. Here, here. And again, the power from this TV isn't going to be as great technically as this particular light here, because this has a warmer hue, and that red light travels further and it's more powerful. Blue light isn't as powerful and doesn't travel as far. That's one of the reasons why they use red lights for traffic lights, because they're so powerful. And red lights, through the spectrum, that will travel. It's got a longer wavelength. in the spectrum, and the blue light, you know, it doesn't travel as far. So let's go ahead and do this. Again, this is quick and dirty. This is not the final. I just wanted to get an idea of what I need to do in the context of the illustration. So again, you know, having that shine. So we're going to go ahead and create another layer. And these are, you know, these, if I go back here, okay. So you see, I've already created a completely different mood than the original illustration, right? These little tangent, I call them tangent practices, but it's basically an exploration of finding what makes sense as I progress through. So soft light, whoops. It's got, oh, there's part of the original sketch. Ha! Okay, so down here, so now we're going to do soft light.
Sorry, could you say that again?
I'm not sure I said Siri. Anyway. Okay, so as you can see, as I go through and I keep layering on these different these light layers and trying to push and pull some of that contrast. You know, that's why in digital illustration you can do a lot of these things. I would have to do this, you know, a little bit different if I was doing it traditionally. Obviously, I couldn't go in and quick and dirty and do things so fast. But the same mindset it's the same, right? You're trying to create a light source, you're trying to create mood, you're trying to change the dynamic of you know, what the illustration is talking about. And right now, it's got that friendly demeanor. It doesn't have a real sinister look to it. So, and then since we've got that extra light source, create another layer. Let's go ahead down. I'm going to shrink the brush down, and his eyes, which, yeah, it's going to be reflecting a little bit. Maybe that's moonlight right there. So I've got to change. I got to change his eye shine a little bit because the light source is over here, and I've got that light source incorrect. So let's go ahead and change the light source. Okay. Let's make sample. Whoops. Sample. And black. Black. Double click. Brings up the color palette. And just so I can keep it on its own layer, we're going to go ahead and do this really quick. Just change that light source over to that side. Okay, so I think this is kind of where I wanted to end up with you guys today, just to show you how I put in the color, the rough color. Let's go ahead and get rid of all this. There we go. So initially, I started out with a sketch. Here's the line layer. And then I went in, and you can see all the layers over here. I created Clip Studio Paint with that paint bucket lasso method. And then I dragged it over here into Photoshop. And I started putting in some of these light elements. And this is a base for what I'll be doing in the final illustration. So what's nice is I already have all of these items over here that I'll be, you know, layer masking and layer clipping so I can control that light and shadow a little bit more effectively. This right here, these things up here are going to be more or less a study. So we can, you know, whoops, we can shift and then layer group layers. So if at any point in time I need to go ahead, see how different that looks. And even if, and sometimes I'll do this, I'll say, okay, that looks pretty cool. What happens if I go ahead and copy and paste it? Whoa! And then I adjust the layer opacity and I can make things a little bit more dynamic instantaneously without having to go back in. So if that grouping contents, if that makes sense to you. And then, you know, I can always refer back to my color study as I progress through, not color, but my light study. So hopefully you guys get a better understanding of exactly my process in drawing, inking, coloring, and applying the light, and basically rendering the illustration in Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop. This was just a quick and dirty video to show you that. I will be posting this on social media when complete, and eventually, uh, soon, be doing a little tutorial. This is sort of like a tutorial, I guess, not really. I guess a lot of people come to the channel looking to learn how to draw, and I do have a lot of videos. Man, I got like almost 600 videos, um, showing the drawing process, showing the inking process, showing the use of different programs, reviews, whatnot. And this is just, again, something I do for fun. This particular illustration doesn't really have a business reference. It is just exploration and showing you the process that I utilize to draw on the computer. So that's it for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you soon. Okay? Thank you guys. Bye. Boom. Nighttime. Yeah, then you can change all kinds of stuff in here. Yeah. Pass through. You can change different layer transparencies.